Hi, everybody. I see there's a few people online, so welcome to today's webinar on wellness and self-care for parents and caregivers. So I'm really excited that Autism Ontario invited me to present today. First things first, they are doing a number of webinars over the next month. I'm doing a series of 4. So this is the first one geared towards parents and caregivers, which is fantastic. I'm glad that I'm able to do it. And over the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks for me, because next Friday is Good Friday. But over the next couple of weeks, I will be doing similar webcasts geared towards adults on the spectrum, so autistic adults, teens and youth on the spectrum, and siblings. So as I said, I'm not doing one next week because of Good Friday. But the reason I'm bringing that up is there's going to be overlap, obviously, between all the webinars that I'm doing, because we'll be talking about wellness and self-care, and there's similar themes for everybody when you're looking at wellness and self-care. So I say that because I want to welcome parents and caregivers, but I suspect there may be autistic folks on here as well who may be parents and caregivers themselves or watching. So welcome to all of you. And I also think that if parents and caregivers obviously want to watch with their teens, or if they're living with autistic adults, feel free to join in as well. The last one that I'm going to do is going to be for siblings of people on the spectrum. So thanks for having me. I just wanted to sort of indicate that presenting this style in this way is not my usual way. So bear with me as I feel a little bit like I'm talking to myself right now. I know there's people out there. I can see people online, but this goes, a little against what I'm comfortable with. I like to be as interactive as possible. So we're all in this together. I know a theme that's been coming up over and over again in some of the appointments that I'm having virtually is that obviously this is unprecedented territory. There's no roadmap for how to do life in the time of quarantine and isolation. And so we're just all going to sort of learn as we go. So welcome to my bedroom. I'm doing this webinar in the bedroom in my house. I have children myself. I have a 13-year-old daughter. And a 9-year-old, and a husband, and we're all in the house together. I have directed my children to try not to come in and see me unless it's an emergency. So hopefully you will not see them. But I know many of you are sort of in the same situation, trying to work, have as much structure and consistency in your days as you can, and that's. I think we're all learning this together. I see people coming onto the webinar right now. I can see the numbers. So welcome to the people who are joining us. I also know, again, this is unprecedented times right now. I also know that people may have to leave if it's your family right now, it takes priority. And so if you have to step off the webinar, that's totally fine. From what I understand, it is being recorded right now. And you'll be able to watch it on Autism Ontario's website after the time. I thought I would tell you a little bit about me. I'm sure most people have never met me, but who knows? And why Autism Ontario may have invited me to do this. My name is Stephanie. Last name is pronounced Moeser. So I'm a social worker here in Peterborough, Ontario. And Originally, I'm from Toronto, though. I'm from Scarborough, and I've been working in the field of autism for over 20 years. Started working with parents mostly. Worked in an intake capacity many years ago, starting at the Geneva Centre for Autism, working as an intake capacity with parents of children, so helping them navigate the new diagnosis. Services, the overwhelming amount of information that comes at people, and still does. So that was where I began. And then I started working more with adults, doing an intake for an adult program. And while I did that, so I have my Bachelor of Social Work. So while I did that, I went back to school to do my Master's of Social Work, and specialized mostly in the mental health needs of teens and adults on the autism spectrum. And so I did that in Toronto for quite a few years. And then if anybody on there is from Toronto, I love the city. I miss it at times, but it's busy. And so we decided to pack up and leave Toronto and move to Peterborough. So I've been here for almost 7 years now, and what I do here is I work part-time at the college, Fleming College. So I work teaching in the mental health and addictions program and the social service worker program, and also the developmental service worker program. So I do that part-time, which has been an interesting time right now. So doing a little bit of that online. As things have closed down. And I also I have my own private practice here in Peterborough, working mostly with teens and adults on the autism spectrum, also neurotypical folks as well, though. So I also over some years have done some work and some training around mindfulness and self-care. So that is sort of my focus today around how to take care of yourself with all of this going on right now. And I know there's no easy answers, and I know we are all learning as we go. And I know that what I'm going to be talking about, some of it's common sense and just reminders. And some of it's, even common sense and reminders, some of it's going to be difficult to implement. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to make sure your expectations for yourself are not that you're lowering expectations, just that you're being aware of what you're placing on yourself, and how to be gentle with yourself. A little bit later in the presentation, you don't have to have it, but if you happen to have a pen and a piece of paper anywhere near you, you don't need to do it, but if you have a pen and piece of paper, we are going to be jotting down some thoughts and some things to think about. So I'd ask you about you, as I typically would, but I can't do that. So yeah, we'll get going to the next slide. If I can remember how to do this. That's the other thing. Just have a little bit of patience. It should go well. I'm the first person to present on this new this interface. And so far so good. But if there are glitches, then we'll be fixing them as we go, but hopefully all should be good. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So a check-in. Now this is going to be an experiment to see if it works or to see if it doesn't, but I just wanted to ask people how they, with a word or two, how they're doing. So I believe you have, underneath a media bar, you have something that talks about, there's a question and answer screen, and hopefully you can see this if I'm sort of doing that. So if on that screen for the check-in, if people are comfortable writing out one or two words that they about how they've been feeling, and I should say that when you answer questions, nobody else is going to see them. Just me and the producers are helping me in the background, and I'll read them out. So thanks for somebody who checked in and said they're doing okay. Other people, how are you feeling at this time? I'll see if anybody else say. I will, as I'm waiting, I'll let people know. I've had my ups and downs myself. You know, we're learning. I'm having some days of actually really enjoying some time at home. So somebody else is saying it's been a change and an adjustment. Thank you. Somebody says struggling. I appreciate people's feedback and giving me information. Struggling, overwhelmed. Yeah, and I think as we go through this, somebody saying tired, dealing with anxiety and meltdowns, change and adjustment, foggy. Okay. So I think what I want to say is right now, good and weird feeling at this time. Okay. I really appreciate people's feedback. So good and weird feeling, overwhelmed, tired, content. Yeah, you know what? I'm having quite a few moments of actually feeling content. I should say I have 2 children, but I want to let people know that neither of my children are on the autism spectrum, and they don't have disabilities. And so I know my experience is different than other people's. So somebody's saying they have a new diagnosis and no ways of mobilizing and getting help. So we'll talk about ways to maybe connect. And as these questions are coming in, I'm going to be putting together some resources in terms of what people are needing and wanting right now. And it will go on the resource, and I'll chat with my colleagues at Autism Ontario to see, I follow a lot of blogs and I follow a lot of parent and information about adults on the spectrum and youth on the spectrum, and I can put together some information. So I appreciate people typing in answers there. It actually makes it much more interactive, and now I know it works. So we're going to be talking a little bit about structure and routine, and some of it's common sense, but some of it's good reminders of things that maybe we forget. And some of it, I want to say that I do know that some of the things I'm going to be saying are going to be easier for some families than for others. And so I am hyper aware of that, and I'm hyper aware that some of the things that are easier for some families and some individuals may be harder for others. So this is just tips and some strategies, and take what you can from it. My goal is for everybody to take away something that can be helpful. And I just don't want people to feel like I'm diminishing some of the big struggles that people are having. And that some of this is going to be difficult to do, and some of it may be easier. So we'll talk about structure and routine. We'll be talking about some do's and don'ts during this time, things that I've had to remember myself, and our expectations of ourselves and others. So how we can shift those things a little bit as parents, as just people trying to get by, to recognize that we need to be gentle with ourselves. And it's okay to have tough days. It's okay to not be the best parent one can be. And how to sort of find moments of peace or calm, or just some moments during the day that help you get by. And at the end, we're going to do a bit of a guided visualization that just kind of like a vacation for your senses, and to think about when maybe you can integrate those times during the day. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so today this slide we're talking a little bit about some tips for structure and routine. Again, I know so when I say set an alarm for the same time every day, I kind of giggled to myself while I was writing this, because I know some families don't have the luxury of an alarm, that sometimes their kids are their alarm. And so I know sometimes your children may not be good sleepers, and you may not be a good sleeper right now. But, if possible, or where possible, trying to have that structure of getting up at the same time is going to be important. It's going to be important for sleep too. So if you can, my family, we've obviously been a bit flexible about this in terms of what's different between now and when we sort of were leaving for the day for work and for school. So we're getting up a little bit later. I've had to be conscious to not let it get too late. This morning, I went and woke up my 9-year-old at 7:45. She looked up at me. She's like, "Is it Saturday? Is it the weekend?" I said, No, it's Friday. And I kind of found that funny, but it was sort of interesting as well, because really the days are kind of bleeding into one another right now, and the difference between weekend and weekday kind of get a little blurred. But the fact that she said, "Is it the weekend?" really said to me, oh, that's sort of important to remember, that people need that structure and need that reminding. The autistic folks on the spectrum that I've been talking to, I really ask them what's helpful for them. This may be helpful for you and your families. Some of the people I work with get overwhelmed by looking at calendars. It adds a different level of expectation, of pressure, and some find looking at calendars really helpful. You know your family's best. So some people I've worked with have found it helpful to, at the end of the day, to not cross out a day, but to check off that day, and the next morning to sort of look at the calendar and know, okay, what day of the week is it? What month is it? Oh, it's April. And to sort of have that structure, that time, to know what time is, to know what day of the week it is. As some of you may be very well aware of, people on the spectrum, so your kids, grown kids or young kids or teenage kids, the concept of time can be really abstract. So having some grounding in that, knowing what day of the week it is, can be helpful in just providing that structure and routine while this is going on. And I know that, some families are trying to keep a little bit to a school schedule. That's been difficult for my family. But if you are doing that, then sort of reminding people what's a school day, what's a weekend, those sorts of things. So the next one is to try to wake up even 5 to 10 minutes before others in your family, if you can. Again, I know that this is not viable for everybody. And so lots of people are probably, their kids are probably waking them up. But, if you have the ability or the luxury like I have to be able to get up a few minutes before people in the house, I am using that as a time to sort of just center myself a little bit. I do meditate and I do some mindfulness stuff. And so I try to do that even 5 minutes before other people get up in the morning, to have that time to ground myself. Another tip I'm going to be sharing a little bit later is I've actually started, I don't know if journal is the right word, but I'm starting to practice what I preach to some of the people I work with. And I'm going to talk about this later on in the webinar. But I have started, it's right here, actually. Mine's a fancy journal that I've never used before, which was given to me quite some time ago. I've started keeping that by my bedside. In the morning, I wake up and I write up some ideas of things I want to do during the day, things that I want to do with my kids, stuff that I want to get done around the house, just so that I'm providing myself with some structure. And that's been really, really helpful for me. And I'll come back to that later. Again, structure and routine. So try to support your family and yourself at eating the same time every day. So having breakfast, we know that's important. And to try to do that breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I've been aware that we're snacking a little bit more, and now is not a time to shame oneself for maybe eating more than you have in the past when you're at home, when you weren't at home. But we're trying to stick to a typical, again, this is sort of common sense sort of stuff, but a typical eating schedule. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The other thing that I've integrated is to just have fruits and vegetables cut up and sitting out so people, my kids and I can grab those things on the go, and we don't have to think about it too much. Try to integrate exercise into your day. I know some of the people I've been talking to, like during my appointments, some friends, people I know, we're going to the gym and we're going to exercise classes as a way for stress management and to connect with other people. And research tells us, and we know, exercise is vitally important to our well-being and to manage stress. I'm also aware that this is a very difficult time to do this right now. We're being advised not to go out and walk and run in groups if those people aren't part of our family. And if you're going out on your own, to be careful around other people, giving that social distance. I also know, sometimes kids on the spectrum and teens and adults have a hard time understanding sort of personal space and the importance of that, and especially with this going on, that can make it a little bit more difficult. And so I know that some families are wary of going out into sort of more busy areas because of that. So as a family, if you have the luxury of having a yard, I know not everybody does. I know lots of people live in apartment buildings. But if you have the luxury of having a yard, to try to make time to go outside and do that. There's some really great, things online to do, and relaxation strategies, and I'll share some of those. Try to have time for your kids and adult children to be doing things. So sort of what we've done is having some structure during the day, and so not hard and fast rules. So what I know from many of the people that I work with is that hard and fast rules for things can be at a certain level of expectation. And many of the teens that I work with, and some of the parents too, if you are writing down some of these intentions or goals, that it can add this level of expectation of the shoulds that we'll talk about in a little bit. So, I think it's good to have a schedule written down, a loose schedule of, this afternoon we're going to do exercise, we'll do something creative, but to know you have to be flexible around that. When I was writing these, I was thinking about think of what you need if you were a plant, what you needed. I'm actually moving my desk today in front of my window in my room, just to have more natural light. But get sunlight, like a plant. Get sunlight when you can. I know that we're sort of inside more often. I know that we're coming into the time of spring where hopefully some flowers will bloom. I know actually it's tempting to be outside more than we should be, and we're really being advised not to be. So if you have a balcony and it's safe for you to be out there, if you have a porch and it's safe, again, a simple thing to remember, but we sometimes forget, is to go outside, to get some of that fresh air. That this is not a luxury, it's a priority right now. Open windows if you have them and if they're safe. I know for people who live in apartments with children, and children who can sometimes be unpredictable in their behaviors, sometimes you have to be really careful about windows. But if it's safe, to make sure that you're letting in fresh air, especially as it's warming up a little bit. When possible, eat healthy foods. I say when possible. Obviously, that's ideal to have fresh fruits and vegetables. But we're also, being advised not to go to the grocery store as much too much. And so sometimes we're going to have to make do with what we have in the house. And I know sometimes, financially things are difficult for people right now, and that's healthy food, unfortunately, sometimes is a luxury because it costs more than processed foods. But if you do have that, to make that to sort of try to prioritize that when possible, that you are eating healthy foods regularly. Time with pets. So I've been seeing lots of great pictures of people with their pets and their dogs and their cats. I've clients who have rats. Not my cup of tea, but I know lots of I know that they're lovely pets, and I've been seeing lots of photos of people. I've actually started asking some of my clients to send me photos of their pets. It feels like a really grounding thing for people to be connected to animals, and that's been helpful for people to talk about their pets. Obviously, spend time with your children, but also time away from your children when you can. That's okay to need time away. If your kids are safe, and obviously safety is a priority. If your kids or teens are safe, you know what? They may be playing more video games than usual. They may be playing, watching YouTube more than usual. Obviously, you want to have limits around that, but also recognize, again, we're in an unprecedented time, and it's okay that people are spending more time doing those sorts of things, especially if it's giving you a few moments away to sneak into your bedroom, to have a bit of a longer shower, those sorts of things to give you a bit of space during this time of being home with our families. I also know many people are single parents, and that adds an added dimension, and that you can't always get the help that you had before or to reach out. I think I'm going to talk about connection later and how important that is. And yeah, time with children. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but your kids probably aren't doing the social groups, the therapy, obviously not the school that they were doing. It's important to try to follow those suggestions that, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, social workers, behavior therapists have given you and your family. However, at times, that's not going to be possible. I read a really good article about what to expect from teens around right now, and that was for neurotypical teens. But teens and kids on the spectrum, there's going to be behavior changes. There and some challenges, and as a family and as an individual, you're going to have to decide what's in your family, if it's okay to let some things go, and what things that you want to have sort of some clear boundaries around. And that's going to be different than it was before this all happened. But make sure you're having fun with your kids too, dance around the living room. So kids on the spectrum, all kids, but kids on the spectrum, emotional regulation and movement is so important. Playing just dance, putting on loud music, dancing around, things like that are going to be really important to help get some of that energy out and just help self-regulate. As I mentioned before, have a clear start to your day. And have a clear bedtime routine. Sleep is going to be very important, and making sure that you're not falling asleep in front of the TV. Although I did that last night, as much as possible. Not that you're not falling asleep in front of the TV. That you're trying to limit social media and news, especially right now before you go to bed. That you have maybe some calming music. Some herbal tea, something that you do every night that helps you get ready for bed is going to be important. Limit or in moderation, caffeine. I've had to make sure that I enjoy my coffee, but I was actually noticing I was getting a little jittery, and I was like, is that anxiety? Which, we're all human, and I have some anxiety right now, like everybody else. But I've had to make sure that I'm limiting the caffeine intake, and I hope other people are doing that as well. And I've moved on to herbal teas, mint tea and things like that. So just be aware of that, of how much caffeine you have. Alcohol. So I was sort of commenting on this with a friend the other day, that there's so many memes and things going around in social media, and many of them are alcohol-based, wine-based, beer-based, and people are joking about it, about drinking too much sort of during this time, but I'm worried it's becoming normalized, and it's just something to be aware of not to get into bad habit of having that extra glass of wine or that extra beer. We also know that impacts sleep, and is not the best coping strategy. Limit or moderation junk food. Again, I think now's the time not to shame yourself. I've heard a lot of people online talking about emotional eating and things like that, but just being aware of that and definitely having it, because moderation is good, but not all the time. I question about putting this one down, but naps. So I think I know everybody's more tired right now. Most people are more tired right now, and everybody's sort of questioning, why am I more tired if I'm at home and sort of not doing as much? The reality is we have a lot of information coming at us. I'm following some trauma therapists on LinkedIn and social media, and really people are talking about this pandemic as really quite a traumatic event, and that we have no roadmap for. And when one experiences trauma, our body gets tired, and it's emotionally tired, and we feel run down, and we're taking a lot of information. So be kind to yourself when you're feeling more tired. Naps, are okay. The only reason I'm saying to limit naps, and to limit naps for your teens, is because it can impact structure. It can be a sign of a mood issue developing if you're sleeping too much. So allow yourself to have some naps, just not too many. And again, some people may be like, naps, I have kids on the spectrum. I'm not napping. And so I get that, but some people have been, and I'm bringing that up too, because, I know some of my teens that I'm working with have resorted to sleeping a lot. And again, that's okay sometimes, just not too much. And this should be self-evident, and I struggle with this, but exposure to social media and news. We want to stay informed, obviously, with what's going on, and information is really important, but we want to make sure we're not being overloaded by it all the time. And especially in the evenings, before you try to go to sleep, just to, if you need to check in to see what's going on in the world, do it maybe an hour or two before bed, and try to decompress and not do that. Okay. Oops. A little bit about mindfulness. I'm just going to touch on this right now because it's a whole, there's a lot of things you can find online about mindfulness, but I think it's really important. When people think about mindfulness, they automatically think about meditation, and the two are not necessarily the same thing. Meditation is more the act of intentionally setting aside time to follow your breath, or to do a guided meditation. It could be sitting down, it can be lying down, but mindfulness is sort of in action, an everyday action of how we pay attention to things. So Jon Kabat-Zinn is, I believe, a psychologist. I always get this wrong. He may be a psychiatrist in the United States, who started the mindfulness-based stress reduction programs. But what it is mindfulness, his quote, which the one that I quite like and typically use. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, so sort of intentionally, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So being aware of what's happening in our body and with us. And the biggest piece of that I always highlight is the non-judgmental part of it. So we as humans have much more compassion, tend to have much more compassion for other people than we do for ourselves during difficult moments. Sorry, let me drink some of my stuff here. So mindfulness means being aware of what you're feeling, and not pushing it away, but doing it in a non-judgmental way. So, it was interesting at the beginning. I really appreciate people's feedback about how the degree of different emotions that people are feeling, to recognize that to be aware of that, to pay attention to that, of where you're feeling it in your body, but do it without judgment. There may be days that are easier than others. There may be tough days where you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're feeling tired, and to have compassion, to not judge yourself for that, to know that that's going to be part of this whole experience, and that many people are feeling lots of different emotions right now, and just recognize it and have some kindness and shine some light towards yourself. Talk to yourself as you would to a friend. That's what I always try to remind people of. What would you say to a friend in these moments? And talk to yourself in those ways. In mindfulness, one thing that we have to be aware of when with these things going on in the emotions, what happens is we have, all of our emotions are valid, and how we're experiencing things are valid. However, some of the automatic thoughts, this is the cognitive framework, thinking framework, all of the automatic thoughts, the expectations that we have of ourselves are not always true. Our thoughts are not always true, and can sometimes be, we can sometimes not be very kind to ourselves. So if anybody has a piece of paper, feel free to do this, or I am going to sort of bring up, maybe it's still up. Bring this up right here. So the other thing I'm going to ask you, if you're comfortable doing it, if there are any shoulds or should haves that you have been experiencing during this time. So when I say the shoulds, I mean like, I should be making sure my kids are doing more schoolwork than they have been doing. I should, I shouldn't be on social media as much. I should be getting more exercise. I should, all those, I shouldn't have had that extra piece of cake. So if people have a moment, just take a moment and jot some of those shoulds or shouldn'ts or should-haves done. And if anybody is comfortable in, so I'm trying to bring this up. Yes, okay. If anybody is comfortable in sharing, I see one there. I should be exercising and staying fit is one that somebody just submitted. Any other shoulds or shouldn'ts that people are comfortable in sharing? I will just wait a moment. I think I'm seeing this right. I should be cleaning more. I've had that one too. Like I should be spending time cleaning. Yeah. I should be sticking to my schedule. So we're, and I mentioned the schedule, and I know I should be staying away from chips. I should be able to adapt to things a bit easier than I have. So I appreciate people giving me these shoulds. These shoulds can be relentless, and sometimes we don't even realize how much we're doing it. Shouldn't sleep as much. Should be there more for people. These are insidious sometimes. And, I mentioned the naps. And the next I'm going to talk a little bit about something called the second arrow. Because we should be staying away from chips, should be sticking to my schedule, should be cleaning more. I've had day one of being at home, I started a puzzle and I haven't done it since then with my kids. I shouldn't be on social media because it makes me feel anxious. Should take time to laugh and enjoy life within acceptable limits. Okay, so I really appreciate all those. I'm going to move on. I really appreciate people thinking about some of those shoulds right now. Bear with me. Okay. Oops. Okay, so those shoulds in Buddhist philosophy are called the second arrow. So the first arrow is the event that we have no control over. So it's the actual situation that brings pain or discomfort, and we have no choice or control over this. The second arrow is how we react. This could be the judgment we place upon ourselves for feeling a certain way or doing or not doing something, and this is where we have some choice. This is where we have some choice to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves, of recognizing we're all doing the best we can right now. And, in some ways there I shouldn't be sleeping as much. So I say all those things about structure and routine, and that's not why I want to bring in this idea of the second arrow. Because we do the best we can, and then we have compassion for ourselves when we don't do as well as we think we should be doing, or we do things and recognize often these judgment of ourselves, of the shoulds, of I wish I hadn't, I wish I did. those are the things that can be more difficult for us and more painful for us. What we should be saying to ourselves, there's another should, what could be helpful to say to ourselves instead is, you know what? I wish I kind of wasn't sleeping as much as I am, but right now that's what I need, and I'll try again tomorrow. Or the chips. You know what? I'm going through a difficult time, maybe not the best coping strategy, but I'm doing the best I can, and I'm going to enjoy the chips while I eat them. So sort of shifting our expectation around some of that. I say the next slide, I mean, it's funny, but not funny. I say it, and I wanted to put this throughout the entire presentation, but I thought maybe that would be a bit overwhelming. But we are living through a global pandemic. Everybody knows that right now. I'm saying that because this is uncharted territory. And we are all, including you and me, doing the best we can right now. And so it's okay to feel worried. And it's normal to feel worried, you know, it's normal to feel overwhelmed. And that's the sort of non-judgmental part of it. So we have to think of some of this sort of dialectical thinking. So using and instead of but when possible. So I'm feeling overwhelmed and, you know, and I'm home safe. It's going to be okay. That I wish I was cleaning the house more. And you know what? Today was a day that I couldn't do that. So the dialectical thinking is it's sort of looking at the gray area, not the black and white. And to remember it's okay to have those two different emotions and feelings at the same time. You don't have to be all things for all people. This idea of productivity versus wellness. There's a visual that's going around lately. I'm not going to say it because there's a very big swear word in it. But really, like, we're just reminding yourself, we are living through something that's unprecedented right now. So this idea that you should be doing all these certain things, as I go back earlier, people are exhausted and the days sometimes are just disappearing, but we're at home and we're safe and we're contributing to the safety and wellness of our healthcare providers, of our doctors and our nurses and the people at the grocery store. And so, you know, I think putting things in context is really important right now, that wellness is priority over this idea of productivity. Learning and teaching versus wellness. So when we have to teach our kids in our school, you know, I think things are going online next week. I know for kids with disabilities, that's going to be an added challenge. You know, my kids, I'll be honest, my kids haven't done very much schoolwork. And I'm okay with that. You know, they're connecting with their friends via social media when they can. I'm asking my 13-year-old to give me one interesting fact a day. The interesting fact I learned yesterday, which random, that in medieval times, that animals used to go on trial for crimes they committed. So there's an interesting tidbit that I've learned. But that kids' wellness and feeling safe and feeling connected to you is primary right now. Therapy and programs, you know, that's going to be, you know, obviously some of your kids may be in different behavioral programs or social programs, and those, some I know are happening online in terms of groups, which is fantastic when it can, and for kids who have the ability to participate in that way. And again, ideally to follow some structure and goals that people and families sort of have, but to know that, again, wellness is important. I know from talking to adults, as much as I talk to them in certain counseling, adults on the spectrum, stimming is a really important thing for adults. So for people, not adults, for people on the spectrum. So, you know, making sure that your kids have time to do different stims that are helpful for them to regulate, and that's okay. You know, those things are okay. And not even okay, important. And it's important for you to sort of integrate that into your days. Again, this is another mindfulness quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our freedom lies our growth. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So really, mindfulness is about, and it's easier said than done, I know that, especially now, is that ability to take a pause. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling, when you're feeling overwhelmed or sadness or anxiety, or your kids are, as much as possible to try to take a pause and make a conscious choice about how you're going to move forward in that situation. What's really important in that moment, rather than acting in sort of a reactive way. But this is when I keep going back to it, and the mindfulness and the second arrow. Sometimes you're not going to respond in a way that that ideally you would when things were sort of in more normal times, and that is also okay. So always beware of the second arrow, the judgment you're placing upon yourself. But try to have that pause to make some different choices. I laughed before I was chatting with sort of people in the back end here who are helping put this on at Autism Ontario and places. And I have these bangs here now. I didn't have them before the pandemic. I in a moment had my 13-year-old cut them for me. If I'd taken a little bit more of a pause, maybe I would have made a different choice. But, those are things that happen. Okay. Another little small activity that I want people to do, and I'm really appreciating people's sharing of their information with me. But either write down or type in that screen. I think maybe I have to bring it up. There we go. Yeah. Type in the screen. So right now I can't see my slides. Put that up. Write down all the small ways that you can be gentle with yourself and shift some of your expectations. So what are some ways or some things that you can do that you can be like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay if I do sleep in one day and don't have the structure and routine. It's okay if my kids watch TV. So somebody said it's okay if I have baths and drink a glass of wine. And I talk about, when I talked about alcohol earlier, people, obviously a glass of wine now and again is fine, as long as if it's not sort of going overboard. Take a bubble bath when my son watches YouTube. So thanks for that. Somebody saying that. That is so true, is that, again, as long as your kids are safe, if you need that time, if you have the ability to have a bath and take that time to do that, then do that. Shift that expectation and know that that's okay. For me, sometimes I'm not getting up as early as I would like. I set my alarm every morning, and I'm sleeping in. Go for a walk instead of a run. So those are small shifts that you, again, it's about being aware of that second arrow. I've been training to do a marathon, which I'm trying to decide right now whether that's a priority for me. And I don't even know what's going to happen. Hopefully it will. It's in October. I have stopped running for most of March. I was feeling really overwhelmed, and I stopped running. And glad. So somebody there said it's okay to take naps. Yes, and so I'm glad you said that. I said limit naps, but again, it's okay to take naps. It is, and not to feel judgmental of yourself when you need to do that. That's important to be able to do that. The other thing is, so I'll go back to what I said. I wasn't running, and I knew that was important to me. And I was feeling really badly about myself for not running at all in March, knowing that really that was something that was going to make me feel better. And I gave that up completely because I didn't feel like I had the energy, and I had to be careful so I shifted that expectation. I am running again in the evenings with just by myself, with nobody else around. And so I had to be okay with, I'm going to go for it. Some days I'm going to feel like going for a run, and some days I'm not. And being proud of myself when I do, and not berating myself when I don't. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. This is just I'm going to put an article, I think, on resources from this person called Tara Brock. And this is just a really simple, the article, and maybe I'll put a guided meditation too. A simple way to contextualize mindfulness and the feelings that you have for yourself. Again, it's much longer. meditation, but what it is the acronym RAIN. So I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with, but it's the acronym RAIN. So R is to recognize how you're feeling. A is to allow it. So recognize. Actually, right now I'm feeling pretty. Let me actually talk about before I did this webinar. I used this. So one, I recognized I was feeling nervous. I was like, ooh, I've never done this before, and kind of talked to myself. So I recognized that, and I just allowed it to be there. It was what it was. I investigated with kindness. So being like, okay, so what's going on here? Why am I feeling this way? One, because it's a new thing. I'm not familiar with it. And the N, the non-attachment, is just sort of letting it go, of recognizing it's okay to feel what you feel, acknowledge it, and then find a way to sort of, I know it's easier said than done, but to recognize that once you acknowledge it, and over time, either let it go or it may dissipate itself. So in this time of people feeling overwhelmed, so recognize that overwhelmed feeling and label it. Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Don't push it away, because it's just going to come back again. Accept that and allow it to be there, and know that that's normal right now. Like, okay, that's how I'm feeling. Where am I feeling it in my body? Okay, that's sort of the investigate with kindness piece of it. Where am I feeling it in my body? How is it, I've noticed recently, I don't know what other people have noticed, but I've noticed recently my shoulders are really stiff. I think I'm sort of crunching more. I'm doing appointments via video and web phone, the camera on my phone, and so it's not ideal. So I've been clenching. I've had some headaches, which I think is not uncommon right now, and I think it's I've noticed my jaw is a little bit sore. So those are the investigate with kindness, and when I'm able to see that and not judge myself for those experiences, I'm able to sort of let it go, and that's a non-attachment piece. So that's just a really good framework, sort of to walk through some of these emotions and things that you're feeling. And so this is a little bit just that connection. People, as you've probably heard, are sort of talking about not being, people are using the word, we're using the word social distancing. Obviously, we're not supposed to be around people who are not in our families more than 2 meters or 6 feet. It's very important. That's, again, I go back to this number one priority is the health and limiting the spread of the virus. And so that's, I think just reminding yourself, although this is tough, we are contributing to a global understanding of the virus, a global protecting people and doctors and nurses from this. And so that I think helps to reframe and ground us. Although this is hard, we're all in this together and we're doing this for the greater good. And I think that contextualizing it can be really helpful. So it's really important though. So they talked about social distancing before, but we're reframing it as physical distancing, trying and being aware to not social distance yourself from other people. So checking in with one another. If you're having a hard time, reach out to somebody. Reach out. There's crisis numbers, crisis lines. Reach out to family and friends. Connect by phone, video chats. You can still be connected even though you're apart. Reach out if you're part of a social group for other parents and caregivers. Reach out to those people and see if you can sort of connect that way. I think it's important to recognize that children, young children and adult children, I know this for a fact from people I work with, feel connected through video games and online role-playing games, and actually feel connected to characters. And I have a lot of clients who have told me that in times of stress, they retreat into their imagination and those characters, and that is grounding for them, and they need the time to do that, and it's valid. It needs to be maintained. And so when it looks like kids are sort of maybe drifting off, they may be in their imagination and their fantasy world that gives them structure and gives them enjoyment and peace. It's like a movie in their mind, and they need to be able to do that. And these are valid, and they need to be maintained. I mean, I think we all do that in some ways too. So I'm going to do this last slide, and then I'm going to try to do just a 3 or 4 minute guided visualization that people can try. There's lots of them online, and you can listen to them, but I'm going to read one myself. But in times of challenges, there often are also things that make us grateful or bring us moments of joy. That's the duality of all this. It can be overwhelmed, but also find moments of joy with, my cats, my kids, being able to see some robins outside. So trying to start the day with a few intentions or goals can be helpful. Again, being aware of that second arrow. So if you're not able to complete them during the day, being aware of any judgment you have on yourself and try to let that go. But I find those intentions can be helpful to sort of ground the day and to give a structure start to the day. And at the end of the day, consider writing down 2 or 3 moments or things that you are grateful for, or moments that brought you joy, or things that you were able to accomplish. Again, I bring this up, a little notebook that I've been doing. I've been doing this, and it provides context. It provides a beginning and end to the day. It shows me that even if you had a tough day, you got through the day, and that can be something just to remember as well. So consider doing that. My clients have been doing it after I've sort of talked to them about that, and some have found it really helpful. Again, if you don't find it helpful, these are just tips. You can not do it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, oops, I went back to the beginning. What I'm going to do now is give me a second, and I'm going to do just a 3-minute guided meditation here. And I'm going to bring up my phone because my music's on it. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, hopefully I can get it on easily. I tried to. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to do a guided meditation. If you're able to focus, great. If you're not, that's okay too. Again, the second arrow. Hopefully you can hear the music. Okay. So I want everybody to find a comfortable position to sit in. And so I want you to take a moment to relax your body. Get as comfortable as you can. Notice how your body feels and make some slight adjustments to increase your comfort. So that may be just moving your neck around or releasing your shoulders. Hopefully the music's not too loud. There you go. Breathing in again. So take a deep breath in, hold it, and breathe out, releasing tension. Breathe in again, and as you exhale, allow your body to relax slightly. Continue to breathe slowly and deeply. As you visualize the following scene, let your body and mind become more and more relaxed with each moment. Imagine yourself walking outdoors. You're walking through the trees, small birches, maple trees, and their leaves are moving slightly in the breeze. The sun shines down warmly. You walk toward a clearing in the trees, and as you come closer to the clearing, you see that it is a meadow. You walk out towards a clearing in the trees, and you walk into the meadow. Tall green grass blows gently. You're probably feeling a bit tired. It would be so nice to sit down in the grass. Walk further into the meadow now, looking around. Imagine the meadow in your mind's eye. What does this peaceful meadow look like? Find a place to sit. You might want to sit or lie down in the grass. Perhaps you have a blanket with you that you can unroll over on the soft grass and lie down. Feel the breeze caress your skin as you sit or lie down in the sun. It is a peaceful day, warm but not hot, quiet and peaceful. Notice the sounds around you, the grass whispering. See the mix of meadow grasses, clover, and wildflowers. Watch a small ladybug climb upon a blade of grass, climbing up toward the top, pausing for a moment, and then flying away. Imagine closing your eyes and listening to the sound of the peaceful meadow. Hear birds singing, the breeze is rustling the grass softly. Feel the sun on your face. Imagine turning your face up toward the sky, your eyes closed, enjoying the warmth of the sun. Smell the earth, the wildflowers, the sun on the earth. Look around again to see the sights around you. The ground follows gentle contours of hills, the blue sky above, some wispy clouds drifting by. The meadow is lush and green, a haven for birds and animals, and as you watch, a deer peers through the trees and emerges to graze at the edge of the meadow. The deer raises its head to look at you, then turns and disappears slightly into the trees. Rest and luxuriate in the peaceful meadow. Notice the sights and sounds and smells around you. Feel the soft grass beneath you. The sun on your skin. Imagine all the details of this place. Stay here for a moment or two. Now it is time to leave your peaceful meadow and return to the present. Notice your surroundings. Feel the surface beneath you. Hear the sounds around you. Look around and reorient yourself to the present. Take a moment to stretch. When you're ready, return to your usual activities, trying to remember this calm feeling of the day. So hopefully that ended today's session well. Thanks for joining me. And again, there will be more information on Autism Ontario's website about next week's sessions. Thank you.